And then they go.
They do. They go.
I think we would rather stay there. We would rather stay there a while longer. It's been very, very dull.
Saying that reminds me of, we went to, when we were still up at Louisville, we went to visit somebody that's been in the hospital. And we were looking for his name up on the board, and his name wasn't there, and I said, we're looking for so-and-so. And the nurse said, oh, he's no longer with us. He wasn't that. She said, no, I didn't be discharged.
Discharged.
I said, you should rephrase that when you talk to people.
You can use phrases like that in many different circumstances.
Yeah, it hurts. My brother just managed to make it. When he got to come up, he didn't move like they had to. You know, doing.
I'm doing all right.
For old.
Doing all right.
It's just
Are you?
yeah.
He's younger than me. 5 years old.
After 3 days, I'm almost over, so I can't complain.
Yeah. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
Another Chilean. But cooking.
Cooking combined and eat.
Right.
That's fine.
And then Saturday, I'm going to Arkansas.
He lives
I
in
think Thanksgiving again with all my brothers and sisters.
Have you heard Phil's story on that?
What?
How Arkansas got its name? After the flood ended, Noah looked out over the Arkansas.
I don't think that's anywhere near that here, right?
No.
Wow.
I think that,
Well, they just traveled.
Scientists are having a rough time figuring out how dinosaurs got way up on top of the mountain and all that stuff. You think?
like Jesse.
They know the history. That's her favorite, so. Yeah. We were on. Well, that is wild.
Jackie, I saw you have a painting at GPAC.
Oh, did you see it?
I did see it. Yes, I did. Yeah.
What does it look like again?
CNO Canal.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's at, Germantown Performing Arts Center. And they put, they changed their art exhibit, I don't know, fairly recently. So they've got all different artists up there now with their works for sale.
Okay. Yeah, I had wanted, it's been a long time since they've had our groups that I've been in.
Yeah.
So I know I'd like to have it in there more.
Yeah.
Because I've had them in the past, but they changed it, who was handling it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, and for a while they weren't really, if you notice for a while it was, I don't know, different.
Different. Yeah.
But now more local artists again.
Yeah.
What's the name?
Yeah.
Just tell people they need to buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, they are
they are growing in pretty well, actually, yeah. We mentioned it to her a couple times early on after she lost both of them, but they really are both, at least got her way in.
Well, that's good, I wasn't paying, she was just.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good sign.
That is a good sign, so I'm glad to hear she's talking to somebody, but she's usually not.
Upper seven.
No, it's just in the back, they kind of get over.
So she is actually a native sugar. Everywhere right now. The only place I know of that.
Barnwood Builder? Barnwood Builder.
Yeah.
My little
We stopped
grandmother,
at
right
their
now,
shop, traveling one time, kind of, I saw a sign, Sulphur Springs, and I said, hey, we were watching that show.
So last time she did that,
It's all good.
Found a wood. Buried in the wood. Near the pass below it. Timber frame and tackle barn still in use. And that's late 1880s. Could get one more real, but just covered over with tin. After documentation shows the tackle barn. It's an old one, I don't know how to get it.
And when I put the Sabina picture in the house.
Really? Well, that's good. That's not fun driving that. Are you gonna sit here and keep me Your elbow.
Yeah, my brother.
Your elbow gets sore.
Yes.
Cindy, I didn't know how much to survive.
Quit asking us questions.
Yeah, all questions must be submitted in writing.
28 hours of advance.
Yeah, right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Take a big deep breath. Made it to Wednesday. That's the elevator. That's the elevator. Every time I hear it, I think it's a bell, but it's not, it's the elevator.
If it beeps fast, then it's in trouble.
Okay, if it beeps fast, it's in trouble. Yeah. All right. Making our way through Isaiah. You all ready to be done with Isaiah? Made it this far, though, right? So, Isaiah is really tough. It's really tough. But that's okay. Because you can go into the New Testament and you can read about a man who was reading Isaiah. And you know what he asked?
How can I understand that?
He says, who is this guy writing about? Himself or somebody else? And maybe you can appreciate that a little more now. Because Isaiah, we said, like, he's always writing about a servant. Well, who's the servant? Is he writing about himself? Is he writing about Messiah? Is he writing about Cyrus? Is he writing about Israel? Or is he writing about this new Israel? So you got five options. And sometimes he just kind of transitions between them without telling you, hey, I'm going to talk about this other one. So it's really challenging. So yeah, I need somebody to help me, just like the Ethiopian did. But chapter 40 to the end of the book, it's I don't know how you want to describe it. It's like you think of it like a play. There's 3 acts to it, and what happens in the middle of the first act is important to understand what goes on at the beginning of the third act. And a lot of scriptures like that. And it's really difficult for us to get the flow of that. I've always thought it's really difficult, whether I was sitting where you are or if I'm up here teaching. It's just hard to capture the flow of thought, and part of the challenge is in how we typically study the scriptures. We just, we're going to study Isaiah, so we'll go to verse 1, and we'll just start in verse 1, and that seems logical, but we go phrase by phrase, word by word, and we'll define some Hebrew and Greek terms along the way, and we get into the weeds. Someone once told me a long time ago that we're really good at taking things apart and looking at the pieces, but we're not very good at putting the pieces back together and seeing how they all work together. So Isaiah presents a lot of challenges along those lines. But to just kind of summarize where we are, Israel was taken into exile. The second half of the book begins with comfort. It has an entirely different tone. We're not dealing with judgment and punishment any longer. They're going to be released from their captivity. They're going to be returned back. But they have been for 2 generations, and God's been silent. And they've been living in Babylon, exposed to that pagan culture. And they've got a lot of questions about Yahweh. Maybe Yahweh's not who we thought he was. Maybe the gods of Babylon are greater than Yahweh. And so this text is designed to settle that. They're not so sure that they want to trust in Yahweh. Israel's problem always has been misplaced trust. And so he offers words of comfort. They make their claim at the end of chapter 40, where they don't believe. So he's going to explain how Yahweh is superior to the gods of the Babylonians, and you have this back and forth between who Yahweh is and, the foolishness of idolatry. Now, woven within all of that is the fact that this is not just about going back to a place and restarting your country. There is a broader purpose in mind. Israel. This is good to remember. If you're an ancient Israelite, whether you're living in this period of time or whether you're living in the time of Christ, Israel was always aware that they were living in a story that had yet to be finished. I didn't think that up. I heard somebody say that years ago and it stuck. Israel was always aware that they're living in a story that is yet to be finished. But here we are, and that story's not finished. They think it is. They think it's over and done. It's not finished. God says, I'm going to do a new thing. That's what's brought out in Isaiah. I'm going to do a new thing. And so he's going to do this new thing through his servant. Israel was his servant. Israel failed in serving. They were supposed to be the light to the nations, but they failed. So he's going to use his servant. one of them, Big Cyrus, they're going to go back. But that's not the end. The end is not just going back to your nation. The end is about fulfilling promises that were made to Abraham concerning how God was going to, well, save, not Israel, but the human family. He's going to save everybody. And how's that going to be accomplished? Well, he's going to send another servant. It's the one that we've read about earlier, this shoot. He's going to, we're going to come up like a shoot out of this burned stump, shoot out of dry ground. And he is going to atone for the sins of the world, which is great news. And Yahweh wants that news to be heralded from the mountaintops. That's chapter 52. So that news is going to be heralded to the mountaintops. He is going to save. He's going to atone. The servant of the Lord is going to atone for the sins of the world. But 53, as we were talking about Sunday, the news is proclaimed, but who has believed our report? They don't believe it. They don't believe the news. And if you think about the story of the life of Jesus, it is a story about people who don't believe and how they respond to it. So 53 is anticipating this reaction. I'm going to send my servant. You're not going to believe. You're not going to believe he's the one that's going to do this new thing and accomplish the salvation of the world. He's going to be, as they're said in verse 3, despised and rejected. But he's necessary. He is everything that Israel was not. He is the lone faithful Israelite. So he's going to be the light of the world, number one. Number two, he's going to be able to atone for the sins of the world, which is this idea of substitutionary atonement that we spent a good bit of time talking about. That's the dynamic of what is shown in Isaiah 53. Over and over and over, with all of these different descriptions, and it's important that we appreciate what's described, the suffering that's described, but it's showing a dynamic that he's bruised for our iniquities. He's dying in our place. We're the ones responsible. He didn't sin. He didn't worship idols. He didn't become corrupted. He wasn't unethical and immoral. He wasn't self-serving. Not at all. Just the opposite of that. And so because of that, now he is able, as the Lamb of God, he is able to pay for the wrong, to pay for the damage. When we talked about this last Wednesday, we asked, well, why did God have to do it this way? Why did Jesus have to die? And that question always comes up. I said, why couldn't he just snap his finger? It's because when damage is done, somebody has to pay for the damage. That's reality. That's how things work, number one. And you can get into a broader discussion about the nature of God and justice. And this is part of how he operates. So no, he wouldn't have just snapped his fingers. So he's the one who can pay. He can pay the debt. He can pay for the damage that humans had done through sin. So chapter 53, just in summary, it makes these four basic points: suffering, silence, rejection, and vindication. So there's unquestionable suffering that the servant is going to experience. It's all an injustice. Yet his response to it is one of silence. He doesn't resist. He doesn't, go find himself a lawyer and try to stop all of this from happening. He's silent. Now there are some things that he says at his trial that are important, and but in terms of the resistance of it, that's what Isaiah is showing here. This servant is not going to be resistant to the suffering he's going to endure. He's not going to put up a fight. Some others did, right? You think about the garden. Peter was ready to fight. Peter was ready to, he was violent. And now Jesus resists all of that. But ultimately, there's going to be a vindication. So the servant is going to be vindicated. And that's what the servant understands. And Jesus expresses his awareness of that. And that's what Jesus' faith is in. His faith is in God vindicating him. God's going to raise him from the dead. Is how this vindication is going to come. But at the end of 53, in verse 11, it says, "Out of his anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities." So you have this idea of how our status is going to change. Status is kind of in my mind at least, it's a very cold word. What's our status before God? Our relationship is another way to describe it. But status is going to change. We're going to be made righteous, accounted righteous, or maybe to use the term that you find Paul using about righteousness being imputed. And it's, what is that all about? It's about how our relationship is going to change because of the atonement that's made for sin. And ultimately, the righteousness of God being brought over to us occurs through faith. Now, that's how we receive the righteousness of God. It's through faith. That's kind of the thesis of Romans. But you have that idea of being accounted righteousness. He's going to bear our iniquities. He's absorbing them. In verse 12 it says, "Therefore I will divide with him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he poured out his soul unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sins of many, and makes intercession for the transgressors." So, something really good is going to come out of this on behalf of the transgressors. They're the ones who are going to receive the benefit from this. But none of them know that. No one knows that. We said, I think I said on Sunday, making that, I keep thinking about what Paul says, had the kings of the earth known what they were doing, they would not have killed the Lord of glory. So there's a complete lack of understanding about what his death means or is about, or who he is. But ultimately, this vindication is going to come, and as a result, then with our status, our relationship changing, then we share in his inheritance. We share in the spoils of war. And that idea is bound up in this text as well. And some of what gets lost on us is the fact that this is all part of a broader spiritual warfare that is ongoing. And, humans are in the middle of it. And how are humans going to be saved from Satan? Well, it's through the cross. It's through the cross. Wait, Paul remembers or writes about this in ways we don't typically think in Colossians chapter 2, where he talks about how the sin that was accumulated, collected through the law was nailed to the cross. Colossians 2, how many times you've heard it said Colossians 2 means that, well, because Jesus died, we're not under the law. We don't have to follow the rules and regulations of the old law. And that's not what he's writing about. That's not what he's saying. His point is the fact that what I just said, that the record of our debt, we have the idea of debt. The record of our debt is canceled. It's nailed to the cross. That's what Isaiah is writing about. And the consequence of that is in changing our status. Paul says in Colossians 2, he goes on to point out how through the death of Jesus, through the cross, he disarmed principalities and powers, triumphed over them, putting them to an open shame. He's writing about spiritual warfare there. Again, that's usually overlooked. But this is a bigger thing that's happening. And I say all of that to say the idea that dividing the spoils with the strong, like that sounds like the spoils of war being shared with the victors. I think it's in the 69th Psalm. I could be mistaken about that, but I think it's Psalm 69 where he gives that idea that it's even quoted by Paul in Ephesians. The spoils of war being being kept by the king, but they're being shared. So there's a vindication. Now, all of that's great. That's good news. I mean, you're shown really the end of everything right in the middle. Well, isn't that odd? Strange for us to grasp that we're shown the end from the middle. And that's what the cross does. What God does in the middle of history is showing what He's going to do in the end. There's a lot that's wrapped up in the meaning of the cross. I don't want to say enough. Sorry. So good. The idea of good news. The cross is going to be good. It's going to be good. So in 54, if you think about this text as being like a play, it's a continuous thought. In these chapters, if you think of the chapters as scenes, they're changing, they're building on each other. So if we go back to 52, this good news is heralded, but nobody believes. Nobody believes the good news, and the servant of the Lord is killed. But somehow, some way, God is able to do something good and glorious out of it. That it's not bad. 54 is about a song. 54 is very positive and joyful, and that's what you're going to find throughout the rest of this text. So, again, the rest of the text, we're thinking in terms of Israel being returned from exile, but given what we've just talked about, this isn't about exile. This isn't about a return from exile. There's something bigger that Isaiah has in mind. Now, what does that mean? Who knows? Who knows? If you're reading this, trying to work through this, it's good, but to be able to really give very precise explanations is, you're not going to be able to do that originally, and I don't even know, how precise we can even be about all of it. But we're thinking about the consequence of the suffering servant of the Lord in 53. So here in 54 is the restoration of the barren woman. Sing, O barren one, O barren one, who did not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor. For the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her who is married, says the Lord. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let the curtains of your habitation be stretched out. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes, for you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your offspring will possess the nations, and will people the desolate cities. Fear not, for you will not be ashamed. Be not confounded, for you will not be disgraced. For you will forget the shame of your youth and the reproach of your widowhood, and remember me, and you will remember no more. For your Maker is your husband, the Lord of hosts is His name, the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. The God of the whole earth He is called, for the Lord has called you. It is like a wife deserted and grieved in spirit, like a wife of youth when she is cast off, says your God. For a brief moment I deserted you, but with great compassion I will gather you. In overflowing anger for a moment I hid my face from you, but with everlasting love I will have compassion on you, says the Lord your Redeemer. So let's back up here and see this idea of joy. A barren woman, no family, no children. In the ancient world especially, you're an outcast. You're an outcast. That status though changes. That status is changing, and that's what Isaiah is trying to point out.
Could this reference to a barren woman possibly be a reference to the fact that Israel hadn't born any righteous children in its past?
I don't know.
That's just kind of a thought that crossed my mind as I was reading this.
Yeah.
Part of the problem was Israel had never produced the kind of faithful, righteous children, servants, that she was supposed to. that was her big failure, and so I just kind of.
Yeah. Now, I think that it has to do more with the keeping of some important barren women in their history and what God is able to do with someone like Sarah. And what happened with Abraham and Sarah, it's like it's happening all over again here, right? So, they didn't need a very big tent for a while. But eventually, you have children and you need a bigger tent, right? Here he's describing that you're going to need a bigger tent. And this is how, what's happening here is how he's going to be faithful to the promises that he made with Abraham about giving him, this family that was more numerous than the stars and the sand on the shore. So you have here that God and Israel here, they're portrayed in a very loving way, right? God is the husband, and Israel is this bride. It's how Israel is described here, and you have part of it is that Yahweh is the ultimate provider. And you think of a husband is supposed to be a provider, so he says he describes himself in two ways in this text. As the husband, more than two ways, I guess, the husband and the creator. The husband and the creator. Now, if we think in terms of this issue of, well, is Yahweh really greater than the gods of the Babylonians? Well, that's what he's describing here. They can't provide the way he provides. And that's demonstrated through how he's going to use Jesus to enlarge in the family. We've seen this earlier, but you see it here clearly, how God has in mind changing Israel. How's Israel going to be? You think, how could Israel be changed? The question is, Israel is the servant, but who is Israel? And that question continues to be asked even today. And the point that is made in the Bible, the Old Testament and in the New, is that Israel is more than just the biological descendants of Abraham. Israel's not what you think. His family is not who you think. And for Israel, they have a really hard time with that, right? We know that. But God has in mind of bringing in everybody else, the nations, the Gentiles. Maybe we've kind of forgotten about that, but have to look. It deals with these other nations and how God is ruling and reigning over them. So, he says, I've deserted you. What's that in reference to?
Captivity.
Okay, yes, captivity. He's acknowledging the fact that, yes, I was quiet. You were there for that period of time, and I've mentioned Amos a couple of times. He uses this line about how there's going to be a famine of God's word, meaning God is not going to communicate with the people while they're in that captivity. The point, though, is that's over. That was just for a short time. God now is going to pick up where he left off in bringing the salvation of the world through this nation. So he says, I like the way it's worded in verse 8, in overflowing anger for a moment, I hid my face from you. For a moment. And they could understand that in terms of their own history. I mean, the exile in terms of their history was just a moment. It was a small period of time. I mean, Israel was a nation much longer than what that exile was. And so it was just for a time, but with everlasting love I have compassion on you. You remember chapter 40, this part of the book begins with comfort you, my people. He's trying to strengthen them and bring them back. So he says, this is in verse 9, this is like the days of Noah to me. days of Noah. Like, we're going way back in time now. This is like the days of Noah to me. As I swore that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so I have sworn that I will not be angry with you, and will not rebuke you. For the mountains may depart, and the hills may be removed, but my steadfast love shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. You know, songs have been an important part of Isaiah, and, you know, verse 10 sounds like a country song to me. You know, somebody's singing about how, it was like a Randy Travis song, you know, my love's deeper than the ocean and all of that kind of stuff.
Good song.
Yeah, good song. Thanks, Kurt. He's trying to tell them, how do you express your love to people? And that's what he's doing here. You know, they could relate maybe. They could, you wouldn't want to relate to this, but they could relate to what Noah went through. What they went through was different, but there were some commonalities there. Like, God did not destroy the human family in the days of Noah. Right? He came close. But he spared Noah. Why? You know, why? Just imagine Noah trying to grapple with the same kind of questions probably that Israel was asking. You know, why did he? What did Noah know about, you know, promises that God had made to destroy the head of the serpent through the seed of woman? I don't know. You know, we're not. The Bible reveals nothing about what Noah knew. All he knew is that Yahweh was the true living God, and he was going to trust him. So some hard things were done, but Noah was spared because God wasn't finished bringing salvation into the world, and nor was he finished just yet. So you have his love expressed. The covenant is going to be reaffirmed. In verse 11, it says, "O afflicted one, storm-tossed and not comforted, behold, I will set your stones in antimony and lay your foundations with sapphires. I will make your pinnacles of agate and your gates of carbuncles and your wall of precious stones, and all your children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. In righteousness you shall be established. You shall be far from oppression, for you shall not fear. And from terror it shall no more come near you. If anyone stirs up strife, it is not from me. Whoever stirs up strife with you shall fall because of you. Behold, I have created the smith who blows the fire of coals and produces a weapon for its purpose. I have also created the ravager to destroy. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed, and you shall refute every tongue that rises against you in judgment. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication from me, declares the Lord." So he's reaffirming this covenant, making some promises here with the descriptions that are given of these stones. Again, it's God's people are being depicted as this beautiful bride. They're going to be protected by her husband. God is described as a protector in these last verses here. Mike?
Yeah, 11 and 12 is very reminiscent of Revelation, description of natures.
Yeah, very, very. And there's a lot that comes out of this part of Isaiah that is found in Revelation. Anything else about 54? Chapter 55. This is a great chapter. You probably heard sermons preached out of chapter 55. Who's thirsty? When I was reading this, I thought about, you know, as a kid, playing outside in the summertime, and mom comes out, "Who's thirsty?" Well, everybody's thirsty. Everybody wants a drink. And that doesn't change. Even more so as adults, we're thirsty. We're thirsty. Not you know, wanting a drink of water or cherry Kool-Aid. That's what we drink in some terrible stuff. But I live to tell the tale so far. But no, we're all thirsty. We're all hungry. You know, and we want some sense of meaning and fulfillment in our lives. What's it all about? And this chapter deals with all of that. We thought we were the first people to grapple with things like, what's it all about? Like ancient people never asked questions like that, right? Not hard. So he says in verse 1, "Come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and he who has no money come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money, without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligent to me and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear that your soul may live. And I will make with you an everlasting covenant by my steadfast, sure love for David. Behold, I make him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. Behold, you shall call a nation that you do not know, and a nation that did not know you shall run to you because of the Lord your God and of the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him, and to our God, who will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways or my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return there, but water the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it. For you shall go out in joy, and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall break forth into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress. Instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle. And it shall make a name for the Lord, an everlasting sign. It shall not be cut off." So God invites the thirsty. You can imagine people living in the Middle East are some thirsty people. I think I heard somewhere where it's like maybe it's the Israeli military that soldiers have to drink like 5 pints of water an hour or something. Not just them, but anybody out there, to stay properly hydrated. Very hot, dry, arid conditions that are not conducive to life. And so water is a very scarce commodity there. And so, where you can find water, you're going to find refreshment, you're going to find life, you're going to find new life. And what you have at the end of this chapter, it sounds like now the curse of Eden is being reversed. And what we're going to start to see in the rest of this book is it sounds like there's a new creation that's coming through this new thing that God is doing. So why do you spend your money on things that don't satisfy you? You want to have that conversation? We've got a few minutes left.
Hope that they will.
We hope that they will. Yeah.
Why do we buy stuff just to buy it?
We could start there. Yeah, Eventually, I think everybody comes to a point in their life where they realize that they need something more than they've got. We live in a really great place. I think we all would agree in the fact that you can set some goals for yourself and you can achieve. And plenty of you have had achievements and accomplishments in your life. You can climb the mountain. You can get to the top. And a lot of people have. It's really something, the way we can better ourselves and you know, have access to things, and have experiences that, you know, the people that we read about here, you know, probably never had. But it is interesting, in, you know, in getting to the top, in achieving and being successful, accomplishing your goals. Is it really what you thought it would be? Often we go pursuing after those things because we think either it's what we need, or that it's what's going to make us happy, or it's what's going to fix us. And you know, there's lots of examples of really highly accomplished people talking about this kind of thing. I can remember years ago with Tom Brady was in an interview, and he just kind of said, you know, is this all there is? You think, man, if that's how Tom Brady feels, like, you know, what do I have to look forward to? Is this all there is? And you know, it's, well, trying to pursue things, trying to find fulfillment without God. It's like drinking sand in the desert, you know, and I think that's what people realize. But a lot of people, when they finally come to that realization, they can become very bitter and disillusioned, or they can continue to try to find the next best thing. And there's always seems to be something greater to achieve and accomplish. But I think that this chapter here is a chapter for every generation. It's a chapter for all cultures. Quite frankly, that's true of the Word of God, as it's even described in this text. But here, it's the thing about it is God's like, He's saying, hey, I have water. I have food. I have what you need. I'll give it to you. And it won't cost you anything. We could talk about the meaning of it won't cost you anything. But He's, in light of what we just have seen provided in 53, say, yeah, it doesn't cost us anything because we have somebody who took our punishment so that we could be forgiven and be made new and share in this inheritance. We can, you know, the righteousness of God can be transferred onto us through faith, and we can receive something better. But it's kind of like the question of 53, who's believed the report? Who believes that? A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. They want to keep climbing the mountain. And if you want to keep climbing, you know, God says, have at it. But I've got what you need. I've got what you need. Kurt?
Doesn't it come back to what Solomon said when he was wrapping up Ecclesiastes?
Well, you know, that's a good example. Yeah.
We're not going to take one thing with us. Those of us that have collected this or bought this or that or a great car, you know, I'm not going to drive it up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to take this baseball up there. Nothing.
Yeah.
Not 1 cent.
Yeah. Yeah, Solomon just found there was a lot of emptiness in the world. A lot of emptiness.
He was wrestling with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vanity and vexation.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds like a thing I heard a long time ago. It says, you spend all your youth trying to get money. And once you're old, you spend all your money trying to get your youth back.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good little proverb. Yeah. That's true. Cindy?
I heard somebody say, you know, God gave us this desire to want things. I mean, the desire for sex, you know, all these things, but man looks for it in the wrong way. You know, riches, prestige, but our hope is, God had a way to do it, and we went a different way.
Yeah.
You know, He gave us all these desires to be thirsty, to be hungry, to want to do well, but there's a way to do it the right way. And God says, you know, I'll give it to you all if you just do it the way I tell you to do it.
Wasn't it Augustine that said, sin is disordered love? You ever heard that? All sin is disordered love. Who said that? I think it was Augustine. Sin is disordered love, which gets to what Cindy's describing, that we have desires. And when they get disordered, we try to satisfy them in lots of bad ways that are harmful to us and the people around us. Jackie?
In 55, it talks so much about what God has to offer, but then at the beginning of 56, he tells us what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We play a part.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think the two can be separated totally,
Mm-hmm.
because they work together.
Right. And I mean, that's what, this whole, I mean, God is constantly, consistently, maybe is a better way, consistently made an appeal to man for what he has to offer them if they would receive it, if they would believe and receive it. And our situation is different in a lot of ways than the people that we're reading about in Isaiah, but in terms of our, humanity, that's not the same. And so he wants us to believe, he wants us to receive what he's trying to give us, because it'll fill us up, it'll satisfy us. So, all right, well, we'll pick up here on Sunday. Thanks. Thank you.
I didn't either.
It won't be your Sunday, but those first two verses in 56.
Mm-hmm.
You live and you do this.
Yeah, so you got to make your point about 56.
Yeah, because I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Somebody's thinking ahead.
Yep.